Jason, we're 5 weeks into the college football season. Aside from the Florida State struggles, are you enjoying this college football season as much as I am? And the reason I ask that is because of the unpredictability of it.
Are you asking me to include the Jacksonville State game or not? No.
Aside from Florida State's struggles, are you enjoying the college football season?
It's interesting to me. You and I have talked about this when we talked about the chats with the playoff, how we're both not big fans of the playoff system, how we're both kind of, the old school bowl games, when there was some semblance to college football. It's interesting. I will give you that much. It's interesting right now because you have 4 teams. The top 4 teams in the country are represented by 2 conferences. The Big Ten and the SEC are currently right now. Now, would you say Penn State and Iowa are the 2 best teams in the Big Ten? Right now, I don't think either one of them makes it to the Big Ten championship game. I think the rest of the season is going to play out. So I would say the word I would use is interesting. I'm interested to see where the rest of the season goes. I think Alabama and Georgia are in line for an absolute amazing SEC championship game, arguably the best one ever, because I don't see anyone on either of their schedules who can compete with them at this point right now. So, yeah, I'd say I'm interested. I'm interested to see how much more hot garbage the ACC becomes, because right now the ACC is a joke, if we're just going to be honest about it. I mean, the undefeated team right now is Wake Forest. The 2 best teams record-wise are Wake Forest and Boston College, and everyone else has at least 2 losses. That's the ACC
NC
right
State.
I apologize, and NC State. And they're all in our division.
Virginia Tech.
Virginia Tech has more than 1 loss.
I think they're 3-1, aren't they?
I thought they were 3-2. Okay, so right now, if you're saying the teams would be Virginia Tech and Wake Forest in the Subway ACC championship game, nothing says stale bread and horrible lunch meat like Virginia Tech and Wake Forest.
But it's so much more interesting than knowing after week 5 that Clemson is steamrolling everyone. And who are they going to play out of the Coastal? Well, it's going to be some marginal Virginia, Miami, somebody that's really not that good. That's 7-5, 8-4, and Clemson's going to beat them by 5 touchdowns, and they've already won the conference, and it's over. This is more interesting.
Do you remember what the score was when Wake Forest played Georgia Tech in the ACC championship game?
9-6.
Yes. It was a field goal fest in Jacksonville that day. The thing with a team like Wake Forest, let's give Wake Forest credit. They beat the hell out of Florida State. They got that win. I'd argue right now they're the best team in the ACC, without a doubt. Wake Forest is a lot like Butler in the NCAA basketball tournament. They're a lot like those Cinderella teams who you root for them in the regional round. You root for them when they get to the Sweet 16. You root for them when they get to the Elite 8. And then when they get to the Final Four, you're like, okay, go ahead. We need you to lose to North Carolina. We need you to lose to Duke. We need you to lose to Indiana or whatnot. So that's the way I see Wake Forest right now. If Wake Forest can do it, God bless them, whatnot. But I think you're still going to see, I think Alabama and Georgia, I think both of them are right now going to make the playoff because I think they're both going to be undefeated, and you can't leave one of them out. The loser of the SEC championship game, you can't leave one of them out. I think the Big Ten champions earned a spot, whether it's Penn State. Penn State still has to go play at Ohio State. That's going to be a mammoth game coming up. But really, right now, who else? Oklahoma?
To me, I'm intrigued because of what we just talked about in the ACC, that I don't know who's going to win the ACC now. For the last 6 years, we've known on week 5 that Clemson was going to win the ACC. Once Florida State transitioned to Clemson in owning the ACC, it's been a foregone conclusion. Right now, you could give me all sorts of, you could fill in NC State, Wake Forest, all sorts of different teams, and I would believe you. I'd say, okay, they are going to win the ACC. The Big Ten, I believe, is going to be interesting from the standpoint of, I think there are a lot of really good teams. It's not Ohio State and everybody else. Oklahoma, despite an undefeated record, is showing themselves to be very vulnerable. That could be an interesting race.
And let's not forget, as much as we're enjoying the fact that Clemson has 2 losses through the first 5 weeks of the season, they're not out of this.
No.
They beat Wake Forest. That knocks Wake Forest out because they'll have the head-to-head. Because remember, only one of Clemson's losses is ACC. And if NC State does the inevitable faltering, which we all know NC State is fully capable of doing, Clemson could somehow still be a 2-loss team playing for the ACC championship game. The devil works in mysterious ways. I will say that. So that's something else. That's why I'm not exactly burying Clemson right now. At this point.
I'm not either. They're buried for the playoff, but in terms of winning the ACC, the scenario you just laid out, I actually think is more likely than most other scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to see happen is Wake Forest run the table. That's what I want to see.
Do you see, and legitimate question here, and viewers chime in here on this one. I'm going to ask a question for both Mark and all the viewers. If Wake Forest runs the table, finishes 13-0 with an ACC championship game, judging by Wake Forest's resume, and I'm including the fact that the ACC is, you could make an argument, is the worst of the Power 5 conferences right now. There's an argument that could be made that it's a little bit better, but there's an argument that could be made it's the worst. Does Wake Forest at 13-0 deserve a playoff spot? Does Wake Forest at 13-0 deserve a playoff spot over, let's say, a Georgia team who comes in at 12-1 but loses the SEC championship game? Would you put Wake Forest over Georgia?
Well, you'd have to give me a full scenario of the entire landscape of the 5 conferences plus Cincinnati. I posted a video the other day showing why Wake Forest would earn a playoff spot in my eyes above Cincinnati.
Go ahead, give it to us. I did not watch it. Give it to us.
Well, it's basically that the breakdown is basically that everyone seems to be trumpeting Cincinnati based on this win over Notre Dame. That's a quality win, good win, but Notre Dame is not great. They'll probably be a top 15 to 20 team with a 9-3 or 10-2 record. So that's a good win. It's a good win, but we don't elevate anybody else across the country based on one game. Other than that, Indiana has faltered. They're not a good team. So that bolstering that we expected of Cincinnati's schedule based on defeating Indiana is gone. And then in the American Conference, it's pretty much SMU is the only team that is going to, again, bolster Cincinnati's schedule. I ran a bunch of different metrics trying to equate Wake Forest and compare their schedule strength to Cincinnati's.
Right.
One would be that the remaining games on Wake Forest's schedule, those opponents are 24-11 and Cincinnati's are 17-21. And on top of that, those Wake Forest opponents are playing Power 5 schedules, and those Cincinnati opponents are playing Group of 5 schedules. So it's even a bigger disparity than that. Wake Forest, despite the mediocrity of the ACC, is still going to have to play a much more difficult schedule overall than Cincinnati.
And here's so far as Wake Forest's schedule. And once again, I'm not defaming Wake Forest at all. I think Wake Forest, if they are 13-0, should have a legitimate argument to make the playoff. So far, the 5 wins they have are over Old Dominion, Norfolk State, the Florida State University, Virginia, and Louisville. They beat Louisville by 3 points last week at home. Now, their schedule is going to get much tougher. They still have their next 3 games are Syracuse, Army, and Duke. I'd say those are all very winnable games. Then on November 6th, they go to North Carolina. November 13th, NC State comes to play them in Winston-Salem. Then they go to Clemson on November 20th, and November 27th, they're at Boston College. So there's an argument that they could go into the month of November 8-0 and leave 8-4. So that's why I'm interested to see what happens over the next month of college football. I think this month of October is going to put some teams out of place. Like, for example, I think Ohio State right now, I think they beat Penn State. I think they knocked Penn State out of the discussion right there. I think Oklahoma, I could see Oklahoma losing this week to Texas. I could also see Oklahoma winning that one big, but you don't know which Texas team is going to show up. You don't know which Florida State team is going to show up this week against North Carolina. That's why I would say interested would be my one word right now for the college football season.
Yeah, I am not predicting or expecting Wake Forest to run the table. So I want to make that perfectly clear.
Call it.
No.
Make the prediction. Make the hot take.
But I will say, you just read off the final 4 games. That is not a murderer's row, but those are 4 quality teams. North Carolina, NC State, Clemson, BC. All those teams should be in the 8-4 range. So those are going to be 4 quality wins and then an ACC championship game.
Oh.
If they go undefeated and win the ACC, I will even go to the point that if they have one loss and win the ACC, depending on what's going on in the other conferences, if they don't get a college football playoff berth, then I don't know why we're playing these games. I don't understand it.
The only way Wake Forest, I think, makes the playoff is if they go 13-0. I don't think Wake Forest can even – Wake Forest couldn't make the playoff with a loss because of how bad the ACC is this year. Clemson was able to do it in 2016 to make the college football playoff with a loss because the ACC was stacked that year. You had a Louisville team that was in the top 10. You had a Florida State team that came in the end and dominated, won the Orange Bowl, made the Orange Bowl that year. You had three teams in the top 11 of the final ranking from the ACC, all from the Atlantic Division. That was a year where Wake Forest could get away with a loss and still have a playoff argument. Wake Forest has to go undefeated because you have to think right now, like I said, Alabama and Georgia, as long as they run the table and stay the course, the loser's going to make it to the playoffs. They'll lose the SEC championship game. So there's 2 spots right there. The winner of the Big Ten, the way the Big Ten has been playing this year, whether it's in Iowa, whether it's Penn State, whether Ohio State comes back and does something there, if Ohio State runs the table for the rest of this time. I think the winner of the Big Ten makes it. So there's 3 spots. Do you think they're going to take, even let's say Wake Forest has a loss, let's say Oklahoma has a loss, and let's say Oregon wins the Pac-12 with a loss. Do you think they're going to take Wake Forest over either Oregon or Oklahoma? Should they? Maybe there's an argument, but I don't think they will. That's where I think Wake Forest gets screwed with a loss. The only way Wake Forest goes to the playoff is finishing unbeaten.